Broadcasting right about now. Welcome, everyone, to the Shin-Arken podcast, episode 7, talking about Elementalists. What's up, Arken?
Hey, Shin, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
Not bad. Yourself?
I'm just chilling, hanging out, relaxing on my days off, like you should.
Yeah.
How about you?
I'm doing the same. Today is actually my day out for the week.
Feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Feels amazing.
Get to sleep in, get to just chill, do whatever.
Dude, I slept for like 7 hours when I got home from work, so...
Noise. Alright, I'm going to start that up. And I'm just making sure that's going. Alright. So, we are going to talk about Elementalists today. But, what do you think? You want to kind of just... Any trends you've noticed in PvP since the patch? We've been going for, 4, 5-ish weeks since the feature patch? It's been about a month.
Well, I can honestly say that it only took about a week for people to realize the optimal build. It didn't take very long.
Yeah.
Honestly. Because, they kept buffing the Celestial Amulet over and over and over the course of many patches.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where it's actually very strong now, especially in conjunction with the Strength runes, which also got a massive buff. At least, and in my opinion, unfortunately, it kind of outshines all the other power runes out there because of that.
Yeah.
So I've been seeing a lot of very strong, like the word tanky meta has never been more prevalent than it is now, for sure.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. It's like, oh, everyone just use strength now, and like I haven't really done much with the Celestial Amulet, but I could definitely see why you would say that because they buffed it a lot to the point where it does a lot for a lot of different professions because you get all the stats, and technically the stat budget on those is higher than other amulets. So it's yeah, I could definitely see why Celestial Amulet would be a little ridiculous. Not to mention you're talking about it's working for, not only is it doing well for everyone else, but it's working especially well for the two professions that really benefit the most for it, Elementalist and Guardian.
You know, the funny thing about it is I've tried it, but I couldn't get any benefit from it.
Yeah.
That Guardians just don't have. Unless, of course, you're running with a group, then you can get that. But by yourself, you're not getting any. Elementalists, on the other hand, oh my goodness. Like, just the sustain from... Because remember, they got their... the Aura Restoration got rebuffed back to its original form.
Yeah.
So you're looking at that on top of the extra healing power that you got from Celestial. So you're getting quite a bit of healing with each cast. Obviously it's not as strong as Healing Signet. I'm not saying it is.
Yeah.
But it's sort of introducing another passive aspect to the game that we didn't need.
Yeah. There's I was doing we're still in kind of the general discussion, but this was I was doing a TPVP match probably about a week ago or so, and I ended up going up against you're gonna hate this. I found another AI build that has come about.
For what class?
Engineer turrets.
I believe it.
Yep.
I completely believe that. Oh yeah.
Yep. Home point defending turret NG that cannot die and has their turrets do all the work for them.
Is that too surprising though, honestly, at this point in the game?
No. I just saw it and I died a little inside. I'm like, okay, yay, another AI build. But it is what it is. I couldn't do anything against it because they were so tanky and just trying to fight through all of their turrets on the point. Just it hurt. But
no, it's very difficult, especially with the constant CC, the boons being applied to them and their teammates. It's one of those builds where at least for me personally, the thought process just isn't needed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and that's an issue for me personally.
Yeah. But it is what it is. Hopefully it'll get to the point where it'll be like, well, everyone's playing really passively. We should probably tone down the pet stuff. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I have a feeling that because they have said that they do want to balance more often this coming season, so I have a feeling that they'll follow up on that, considering they followed up on a lot of their other stuff. So
right.
We'll see. Here's hoping.
Did they? I don't remember actually reading that. Was that an actual official post? 'Cause again,
Um,
I just don't remember seeing it.
I tried digging for it. I think it got buried somewhere in the forums, but one of my viewers who is a credible source told me that. So I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt and
That's fair.
go with it. So yeah, here's hoping. The Just before we jump into the elemental stuff, a little bit more PvE oriented stuff, but you see that the Festival of Four Winds and the Crown Pavilion's coming back.
That's not surprising. Again, those events were always supposed to come back, just through the yearly cycle, which is exciting because I really enjoyed it. So I might partake in it a little bit.
Yeah.
Especially, I'm sure there's going to be quite a few changes to it as well, along with the old stuff that we all enjoyed.
Oh yeah, I'm stoked for it because not only do we have content finally coming after this break, but it's the start of the new. I would assume they're going to use it to lead off the new season. It's going to have a bunch of new stuff in it. It was enjoyable before, with all of the Bazaar of the Four Winds. You had all the jumping around and all that fun stuff. In the Crown Pavilion, you had the Queen's Gauntlet and things like that. So I'm excited to see that stuff coming back. It was definitely enjoyable, and yeah, I can guarantee they've made at least a few fairly major changes to it.
Yeah, just a little couple additions, I'm sure, but the concrete, the ground has been laid for it.
Yeah.
So a lot of those people who may have missed it, because they purchased it late, or those who just enjoyed it, are going to come back and they're going to really like it for sure.
Yeah, they'll enjoy it. I do miss my labyrinthine cliffs. That was a fun zone.
Oh yeah, dude, my favorite was the sprint, the Sanctum sprint.
Yeah,
I love that. That was my absolute favorite.
Yeah, that one is actually still in the you can still do that now. That was it was added to the activities roster, but then again, it's a rotating roster, so you may not have been able to do it all the time. I was a massive fan of you remember that crystal scavenger hunt they had to do?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That was so much fun. I had a ton of fun with that.
No, that was all a blast, dude. I can't wait to try it again a little bit.
Yeah, and then the Queen's Gauntlet was a whole bunch of fun as well. Just try challenging yourself to face various mobs with interesting mechanics that weren't always easy.
No, of course not.
Liadri.
Initially, no.
Liadri.
Oh, dude, I about that. I grinded the crap out of that to not only beat her, but to get the achievement that she had attached to her.
Yeah.
So that one, the second part, was much harder than the first.
Oh yeah, I didn't even try going for the achievement because I was just so happy to beat her the first time. Like, yes, got her. I'm not gonna bother with this for a while. But
oh, dude, I had to do it. I was like, "You're dying. I'm sorry."
I
actually had a friend because you had to count the orbs, and I lost count like half the time.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm too busy trying not to die. So I had a friend come with me and just count them for me as we're doing it.
Nice. Yeah. If she's back. And they do the gauntlet again or something, or if that achievement is otherwise available again, I'll probably go for that one just because extra challenge, and I already had the first one, so.
Right. I can imagine it'll come back because again, you can't. It's like pretty much everything else in the world in terms of achievements. Those permanent achievements. They're gonna have to give you the option to beat it. In one way or another at some point.
Maybe they'll have a whole different gauntlet to do after that one or something.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah,
absolutely. That would be really neat to give it a shot.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's only a week away, so.
Mm-hmm.
All right, or even less than that. All right, Elementalist stuff. So I've been doing a little bit of playing around with mine, but Arken, have you been testing the Elementalist at all? Have you been giving it a try, stuff like that?
I tried it a little bit. Elementalist was never really my flavor, but again, fighting the Elementalist and seeing the changes. It really opened up my eyes to see what exactly they've done.
Yeah.
And sorry. And I'm not saying Elementalists didn't need help because they obviously did, but I think the more appropriate way to handle it, because everything is just so ridiculous, why not just tone everything else down to where the Elementalist is, and then go from there? Why keep buffing things? You know what I mean? Why? Yeah. It's not a necessity. I mean, yes, they need help, but not the kind of help that I think we're looking for. We're not looking to just keep buffing things constantly. Power creep is just going to keep coming on us, and that's the last thing we need. So instead of just doing that, which is exactly what they've done, bring it down. Now I understand, they didn't get too many buffs, but when you look at, say, the amulets and the runes, that class benefits from those changes more than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are other classes that benefit as well, but not nearly as much from what I've seen.
Oh yeah, Elementalists have definitely come back into the forefront as far as SPV goes. Like even just earlier tonight, I was messing around, just kind of getting a little more familiar with the Elementalists in SPP, and I went through and I was actually holding my own as a fairly novice Elementalist, just because of the strength runes, because of the fact that you can stack might that high and get that kind of damage while still remaining tanky with like a soldier amulet and a fairly tanky build. I think I was running like a 00626 build, cantrips and whatnot,
Right.
and it was just, I was holding my own, and I wasn't really expecting to, but just with some general knowledge and general SPVP gameplay skill, I was doing pretty good. So
Right, absolutely.
I definitely agree with you that that the sigil and rune changes have definitely helped elementals a lot where they needed it.
But again, I just think again with the buffs to some other things, which everyone else can sort of take advantage of. Again, it's helping others more than than the rest. Obviously,
Yeah.
is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. It seems like even with all of the nerfs that happen to say Hambo or any of the other professions, the sigil and rune changes that kind of negated a lot of those changes. I mean, don't get me wrong; the changes, like for example with Warrior, the pin down nerf or the arcing arrow nerf, those were needed and they definitely have made a difference. But the fact that now you've got like strength runes running around and Hambo can still build tanky and get the damage it had before,
Oh yeah.
it's almost like it was negated, and this is part of the reason why we see things like Hambo still up at the forefront.
Right. Well, at least Bo, because again, I've just been seeing a lot of people laying down the fire field, blasting into it with the strength runes just to stack it up. Like you don't even most people, like a lot of people I see, don't even bother hitting their target. Obviously, if you can get it within the field, then sure, go for it. But in all honesty, it's just like, sweet, another 3 stacks of might for like
20
30
seconds.
some odd, 40
Yeah.
seconds, some ridiculous amount. So it's actually pretty interesting to see.
Yeah, exactly. And elementalists of all have definitely benefited from being able to do that, because elementals are pretty crazy as it is with might stacking, but then you throw the runes of strength in there, and you almost got perma 25 stacks of might, like an HDH build almost for elementalists.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and again, when you start stacking on that sustain combined with the signet change with celestial amulet, you don't you're looking at a very bursty profession, or the potential, while still remaining incredibly sustaining due to that health increase, armor increase, just everything increased by quite a bit due to the celestial amulet upgrades that we've been seeing over time.
Yeah, and after I actually did some testing after, or no, it wasn't really testing. It was just I was playing with viewers at the time, and went in to do some dueling. And one of my viewers over on EU, he's a big Elementalist guy, and after these changes, I saw him just end up overpowering me because he could stack so much might.
Right, and you
these
can't
setups.
remove it as a warrior. You have nothing to remove that.
Yep.
And again, I think that's sort of what we kind of need to move to in a sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some way to remove that, because you're looking at a lot of professions. Most professions can keep at least 15, some more than others, obviously.
Yep.
But there's got to be a way to remove that. In fact, there was one way that I have noticed, and I have tested it as my guardian, is I got a trait called Searing Flames. Anytime I burn, every 10 seconds I remove a boon.
Okay.
I tested it, and for some reason it prioritizes might every time. So I was actually able to consistently not rip it, but remove it from my target. So again, that's just one of those weird traits that just prioritizes it. I didn't realize that until I tested it. But again, not many other professions, if barely any, have the ability to remove that as easily as that. Like you have mesmers who can do it, but again, you're looking at no field, and anyone smart enough's not going to stand in it.
Yeah.
Thieves can do it, obviously, with sword dagger. They've been ridiculous with
Yeah.
that still.
Mesmers,
Who else can do it?
Mesmers do have other tricks. You don't see it very often. Things like Arcane Thievery, they can use that. I'm pretty sure they have a few other like proc traits that will remove a few.
Right.
Necromancers can do it. They can corrupt boons.
Right.
I like you said, the thieves can do it. I want to say engineers can do it.
I've never seen a trait that they have that can do it, though. Honestly, I don't know of any trait that they can use to do it.
Maybe
I might be wrong.
I feel like it's part of one of their kits, like maybe their elixir gun or something.
I can check right now.
Well, go for it. Let's see, Rangers.
I doubt it. No, there's no way. They have nothing that takes away boons. I'm like 99% sure on that one.
Yeah,
to be honest with you.
I'm pretty sure on that one, but yeah, they might have some hidden in there. But yeah, like Warriors definitely not. We have one boon hate trait where when the only boon our target has is might, we only gain 3% more damage. That's not a lot. It's good against it's a good trait against like Guardians. It's a good trait against say people using Lissas or Thieves with stealing ectoplasm and stuff, but as soon as you throw like protection in there, it completely negates it because protection is flat 33% damage reduction, and at a maximum, I think this trait can get up to like 25 or 28 more damage.
I mean, you're still helping out by doing more damage. You're not completely negating. You know, I mean, you're still doing something, but again, it's still protection has got just a huge bonus.
Yeah.
That you know, for me, also kind of needs to be looked at in a sense because 33% is huge.
Yeah, 33% is the equivalent of I think like
1,000 armor, isn't it?
No, it's way more than that. It's like
really? I thought it was like 1,000.
No, it's way more than that. It's equivalent to I think like 20. It's either 21 or 25. It's like it's some combination of 2, 5, and 6. But it's like
you're kidding me.
Yeah,
wow.
It's like I think it's 2156 armor or 2156 toughness, one of the two. It's ridiculous. Like people will say, "Oh yeah, you're a warrior. You've got the highest base health and armor in the game." Well, it's like okay, but we don't have excess protection. You know how much extra damage mitigation protection adds? A whole lot more than we can get. So, and that's why a warrior backed up by a guardian is pretty ridiculous because
that protection access that you're given. Absolutely.
And bringing it back to Elementalists, they have access to that, and that coupled with a lot of the changes has allowed them the natural tankiness that they get from all of the protection access they can have, all the healing that they can get just from part of being part of their kit, and their mobility, even though it has been nerfed a little bit, they can still hold their own. And then with the changes that came through, they were bumped up to where they are now.
Absolutely.
I think what do you think the main reason for Elementals kind of being towards the bottom and not having it so well off before the patch was?
It was just a simple matter of power creep with other professions, honestly.
Yeah.
Over-buffing so many other professions and then leaving other ones alone, or in some cases even nerfing them. That's what the issue was. It was over-nerfing and or over-buffing on both sides.
Yeah.
Okay, and that was just the biggest problem, and that wasn't looked at for such a long time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's honestly just what it is. You know? Yeah, you're the bottom of the barrel for so long, not because you're generally weak. It's because someone else is just that much better than you. That they need to be looked at. You know?
Yeah, and that's kind of the same situation as Warriors were, and using my old wheel metaphor and just comparing it to how it was originally, Warriors and Elementals actually used it before the feature patch, of course, but in the previous meta that we had, Warriors and Elementals were actually flipped from what they were at launch. Warriors were at the bottom of the barrel because, like you were saying, everyone else could do things that we just couldn't. We didn't have the sustain to do. We weren't able to keep ourselves up and in the fight for long enough while other people could. And Elementals were the exact opposite. They were very powerful. They had a lot of sustain, a lot of mobility, just a lot of tools to keep them in the fight, no problem. But then, yeah, like you were saying, Warriors got the power creep issue, and we got thrown through the roof, and Elementals got over-nerfed and sent down back to the bottom. So I agree with you 100% on that. I do feel like, yeah, I agree. It's the power creep and over-nerfing issue on both sides.
It seems like, you know, them finding the sweet spot is obviously the hardest part, and that's understandable. You're never going to perfectly, you know, balance a game. It's not possible. But again, the whole concept behind little tweaks here and there should have been the mainstay since the beginning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But constant updates, not like here's a small tweak every 4 or 5 months. You know what I mean? That should never be the case. It should be small tweaks like every week or two or something like that. That would have been great.
Kind of like what Riot does with League of Legends.
Absolutely. Just constant tweaks here and there. Very small ones. If it doesn't work, revert it back and then try again. Yeah. That's, again, what what should have happened. But again, you know, it's I'm hoping they kind of learn from that. I really am, because again, you know, crap, I just had a brain fart. The potential has always been there, and it still is. It's just finding the sweet spot. So hopefully we'll get that one day.
Yeah, I think one thing that was kind of, and this is purely speculation. This isn't a jab at ANET's balance team or anything, but I think what problem may have been before was they would make a change, but they didn't want to revert it because it was almost like, oh, well, it looked like we were wrong and we balanced the wrong thing or something like that. Just kind of, not, I don't want to say egotistical, but you know how people are. It's just general human nature. You don't want to be wrong. So I think it may have been a reluctance to revert changes that were made because it would either make it look bad, or it would be, oh, is this really what we should do? Should we really turn it back to what it was? But honestly, that's the best thing. If you need to, if you make a balance change and it doesn't work out, but you know the case before was you were trying to find the problem, the fix you tried to do didn't fix it, you gotta revert it. You gotta revert it and then try some other balance change. If you take the same base foundation and then just test variations of it, then you're able to better find the problem, because you can see, okay, what's changing every time I make this variant, and what isn't being fixed, and then what do I have to look at? Doing things like that, and it seems like they've been doing that. They have been reverting a fair number of changes in recent
quite a
patches.
few.
Yeah,
the Signet being one of them. That was that's one of them. You're looking at, like, I believe Doomfire was also another one.
Yep.
I mean, there was quite a few changes that were reverted at some point. It took them a while, but it happened.
Yeah.
So I mean, they just keep doing it. I mean, we don't care. None of us really care if you do that, because it's sort of like you admit that, look, this was too strong or too weak. Let's bring it back, and then we'll look at it again. That's all.
Yeah. Honestly, most players, most people concerned about PvP and balance, especially balance, aren't going to care if you go back on something, because we're concerned about the balance. We're not really cared about whether you look bad or anything like that. We're not most people are pretty reasonable about it and aren't going to chew you out on the forums just because you went back on a balance change, because it's in the interest of the balance overall. We want to see a balanced game. We want everyone to be viable, and for skill to be the true driving factor between whether or not someone wins or loses. And yeah, like I personally don't care if they have to revert a change. Like they're doing that with the healing statement for warriors. I agree that it was overtuned, and it's still a little overtuned, and they're reverting the giant boost to it that they gave it before. Same with the Elementalist. The Elemental, I think it was cleansing.
What's that?
Water, or
what do you mean?
The one they split before and then they unsplit this last patch. Was that?
I believe. Well, that was the you talk about their Signet, right? Isn't that what you mean? The one where every time they cast a skill, they heal. Yeah, the Signet of Restoration.
Oh, okay. So it was Signet of Restoration. Okay, yeah, but like them reverting it, that was fine, because I knew Elementalists were in a bad spot. So
I just think, again, when you look at that, and they did that, and I'm not saying they shouldn't have. They also added other changes which significantly benefited that and sort of compounded another problem, which being tanky and bursty at the same time. So that's I don't know if they looked at that or not. I have not the slightest clue, but it definitely seems like they kind of missed it a little bit.
Yeah, I think what happened is I don't know if this was intentional or if this was accidental, but my guess is they wanted to do all the sigil and rune changes, but they also wanted to fix some of the glaring issues, and either intentional, they wanted to see how it played out, or accidental, and they weren't thinking about when they do it. I would assume it was pretend, or it was intentional, where they wanted to fix the outstanding issues and also see how the changes to the sigils and runes affected the balance along with those changes. Because I remember them actually explicitly saying that during one of the ready ups, we don't want to do a lot of big changes because we want to see how the sigils and runes change up the meta.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, so I would assume they're doing it intentionally, and we'll have a bit more balance coming soon because then they'll be able to better monitor things. Because I think it's almost like the sigil and rune thing was almost like this elephant in the room for them, and they wanted to fix that. Like that was their primary thing, and that's why it took them a while to balance everything, because they were focused on getting that out of the way and looking at the various effects that could have. But again, you can't see how it really works until you apply it.
Right.
And they've applied it, and now we see that strength runes are so widely used and so widely beneficial.
Of course, everyone uses them, regardless of what build you're running. But again, the benefits from one class to another, are significantly different. Again, I use one of the biggest examples is Elementalist, of course. I keep bringing that up.
Yeah.
But just the biggest benefactors of those two, the Celestial on top of strength runes, that benefit was huge for them.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know if any other profession, I mean, maybe warriors could do it. I've never tried it. I don't know. Could probably do the same thing, but in terms of like might stacking, constant mobility, constant CC through auras, and and then the mobility on top of a little bit of burst, depending upon what you're running, it's very strong for sure.
Yeah, warriors. If we were to try and do what elementals do, we would have to give up a number of things. We would either have to go full-on might stacking, and we could stack it relatively quickly, but we would give up all of our mobility. Now, on a point, mobility isn't a massive deal, but if you get outnumbered or something, and you have to get out, and you don't have any mobility, you're screwed.
Mm-hmm.
But we would have to either give up all of our mobility to do the might stacking. That's what Hambo does, or we would have to give up a lot of might stacking capability, or quicker might stacking capability for mobility. Like Greatsword doesn't have any blast finishers. Sword doesn't have any blast finishers. We'd have to run like Sword Warhorn or something to get any sort of blast finisher going, and you'd have to couple all of it with the longbow, because that is literally our only source of might fields, of fire fields. So unless we've got allies that we're messing around with, we can't really do it as. We don't have it as self-contained and as easy to access as Elementalists do. Because Elementalists, they've got daggers on, they can throw down dagger 4 and then blast it with Earth 2 and now Water 3 and just go to town with it.
Of course.
Yeah, or like with the staff, they could drop Fire Field, and then I don't know what their other. Oh, I think they have another blast finisher on their Earth Attunement 2. Atonement, yes. But Elementals, they can just do all of that. They have that all wrapped into their kit. Now, granted, you have to be good. You have to know what you're doing to get all of that stacking going. And that's why Elementalist is up there as far as skill caps go, like with Elementalist and whatnot. Or not, sorry. Yes, Elementalist is up there with Elementalist. Up there with Engineer. Because they have all of these tools, but you need to know how to use them and how to get them to work together. But an Elementalist player who knows what they're doing can definitely get that working for him a lot more easy than, say, a warrior could.
Oh, of course, because again, I mean, I've just made up I know the build that's used most, at least from what I've seen in terms of like with the meta. It's 0-2-0-6-6, where you put 2 in air, 6 in water magic, 6 in arcane, with obviously Celestial, Amulet, power runes, and you can use Sigil of Battle with whatever else you want on the opposite side, depending upon what you want to do. And again, you're looking at quite a bit of sustainability. Again, when you're looking on top of, again, just the innate sustainability you got from Celestial, because with this, you're looking at 18,000 health. A little bit more armor than what you normally have than Zerker, obviously. And again, you're looking at constant protection access. You then obviously have your Ice Aura, which again gives you another 10% damage reduction. You're looking at quite a bit of reduction of damage through either soft CC, innate physical damage reduction through the armor, protection access, being able to potentially cut your opponent. You're not really giving up much, and it's almost like I want to say it's the jack of all trades, but it's a little stronger than that. Because if it were the jack of all trades, you'd have to actually be able to give up something for something else, which isn't really given here. You're looking at a lot. You're looking at a ton of boon access. A ton. I mean, your protection every time you swap to Earth is 6.5 seconds on a 10-second CD for you and everyone near you in a radius. I mean, the radius is small. Granted, I understand that, but you're always gonna have that access. Almost always. Obviously, I'm not saying always because it's not possible, but a ton of access just to just a physical mitigation. Now, obviously, condition mitigation is a little different, but ever since they made the change to cleansing water, which I think that's what you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Cleansing water also got changed, where I believe it was on an internal cooldown. That's got removed. There's no internal cooldown. I believe that was the change.
That was
so anytime they get regeneration, they remove a Condi from themselves and an ally. Anytime they get regeneration. And obviously cleansing wave, if they spec into that, removes another. So you're looking at a ton of mitigation through conditions as well as physical damage. A lot of mobility, a lot of might stacking, because again, every single time you get a piece of might, it's 26 almost 27 seconds.
Yeah.
So you're looking at quite a bit of sustainability with burst potential if you know what you're doing. I'm not saying you just get it like if some Joe Schmo comes around, out of nowhere and says, look, I want to play Elementalist, I'm going to be a god at it. Obviously not. That's not going to happen. But anyone who knows what they're doing, knows their rotations, is going to be able to keep those might stacks up on top of maintaining their sustainability. And again, that's a little bit of the issue. So I don't see, you're not giving up damage in this build because, again, while yes, you don't have many points in your offensive trees, you make up for that with strength runes. You know what I mean? And since you have maximum boon duration, through arcane power, you're looking at a lot of boon, might access with a ton of duration attached to it.
Yeah, the thing is, it's weird because I agree with what you're saying there with the whole being able to gain all of this damage while still being tanky with strength runes. But it's weird because I've gone up against, I don't know if this is because warriors are still a little overtuned because like our healing statement is still running, but elementals, while they have been a problem, they're actually a fight now in SPVP. I haven't noticed them being grossly overpowered. Like I haven't gone and assaulted a point against an elementalist and immediately have to dip out or not stay in there for as long as I would expect because they're crazy overpowered or anything. Like they're a challenge, they're a fight now, but I wouldn't say that they're like what warriors definitely were before and still kind of are with Hambo, where it's just this monstrosity of a point holder or point fighter that just you've got to really play well to shut them down, or they got to be a terrible player before you can really do much. Like elementals, I haven't really felt are this. I don't feel like they're super OP or anything. They feel strong, yes, but they don't feel unmanageable. And it's really like I don't really know how to evaluate it because it's
right. I think it's based on profession.
It might.
Because again, you play a little bit of a warrior, which again, at least for me, is still pretty strong. I honestly, before the patch, I could fight elementalists, and it wasn't too much of a challenge. We could fight constantly. If it was a good one, we would go for a while. After the patch, I can honestly tell you that it's pretty much near impossible for me to take down an elementalist, only because of that sustain access they have. And then as the fight gets longer and longer, which it will because of their sustain, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're going to have even more and more might stacks, which will equal to their increased burning damage and physical damage, which will lead to my death. So, again, I'm not saying they didn't need help, but again, it's very difficult, at least for me as a DPS Guardian, to take them down, if not impossible, due to the fact that, well, yes, I have decent burst, and I'm not saying I don't. If I burst you down and you react quickly enough to it, it's very simple. It's very easy for you to gain your health back, or kite me through Ice Aura, keep me at a distance, and then regain your health back and then re-engage. So it's very difficult to fight as a DPS Meditation Guardian through that sustainability. And then again, as I said, as the fight gets longer and longer, you're probably going to lose because the access to their might has gotten stronger and stronger.
Okay, so it almost sounds like a situation where some professions are having the issue that warriors had before, but on a bit more of a spread out scale. As far as the ones
Sort of.
who are in the situation that the warrior was in, rather than one profession being in the situation where being in that situation where because how warriors were in the one of our very first metas where we could get in, we could run in and just burst someone down, but if a fight, we were almost playing heavy armored thieves because it was basically we had to get in, do our damage, and try and kill our target, or at least weaken them enough for our team to take down as much as possible, and we had to get out because we didn't have any sustain to deal with all of the damage or all of the sustained damage and outdo our opponents after that initial burst. That we just couldn't stay in the fight and we had to get out because our healing signal was absolute trash back then. Healing Surge had, and I would argue still has, the problem of being on too long of a cooldown and being tied to adrenaline as far as its healing values go, and mending just not healing for enough. But we just couldn't stay in the fight, whereas back then you had the Elementalists, you had the Guardians, you had Necromancer, you had everyone who was able to stay in the fight for as long as they needed to, and they were able to sustain themselves, whereas warriors were not able to do that. And it's almost sounding like, at least from a Guardian perspective, from what I'm understanding for you, specifically against Elementalists, you're running into almost a soft version of that where you are being out-sustained baseline by another profession. Whereas say warriors right now, we're still overtuned with the healing signet, so we don't have that sustain issue. We can stay in the fight and we can stay toe to toe with elementals, and like from my perspective, they don't seem that powerful. It might just be I don't agree that there are, or I don't disagree that there are, that elementals have gotten stronger and they may be a little over the top, but at the same time, it's almost like the issue isn't necessarily with elementals as it is with strength runes themselves. And as we mentioned before, you see everyone using strength runes now.
Of course, everyone runs it. Absolutely.
Yeah. And people are getting a lot of benefit out of them to the point where it's almost making or breaking a lot of builds. And it almost sounds like that might be the situation that's causing it as far as the Elementalist goes. Because I know with Hambo is only being kept alive by Strength Runes. Without Strength Runes, Hambo is going to be a very mediocre build because it can't... The typical Hambo build builds tanky but relies on the might stacking to keep itself alive. Or it builds for super damage and it builds for super damage stats and then a defensive build for effectively the same thing, just different trait selections. Without those strength runes, it's either going to lose a lot of damage, or it's going to lose all of its damage and just be like a tanky bunker point build.
But the question that I have, and goes back to what we were talking about, isn't that the kind of the way it should be? Shouldn't you not have access to both? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's what I.
That's. I was going to say that, like, I would want that to happen. I would want Hambo to not be what it is, where it's just this monstrosity because of might stacking now. Before it was just baseline crazy. Now it's only crazy if you're using strength runes, which everyone is doing. If you take that away, Hambo becomes a build that I wouldn't hate anymore because it would be exactly as you were saying right there. It would be one or the other. It wouldn't be this good for everything SPVP build.
Absolutely. And again, that's sort of what I wanted to stray away from, but unfortunately it seems like we just keep going back to it. And the funny thing about it, and what we were talking about earlier, is that it's may not have been too much of a problem for, say, a warrior, in your instance, but a little bit more for me as a guardian. The funny, some people are going to laugh at me for saying this, but I don't care. Right now, as it stands, I would rather fight a warrior than an elementalist. And the reason why I say this is because the sustain of an elementalist is so insane right now. It's again, I'm not trying to say, it's hard for me to just come out say this as I'm complaining or not, but the sustain of a warrior, at least for me, isn't that great in comparison due to the simple fact that all you do is rely on healing signet.
Yeah.
You don't get extra heals through cleansing wave, the constant regeneration. I'm talking about? It's not there.
Yep.
So yes, you get constant healing through healing signet. It's little bits here and there. I can honestly tell you, like, I've bursted on an elementalist landed almost everything I had. Dude was at like 25%, popped his ice aura, kited me, and healed himself back to up. You know what I mean? Again, I'm only talking about this from a Guardian's perspective, right?
Yeah.
So I honestly would rather fight a warrior over an Ellie any day of the week right now because of how ridiculously sustainable they are, how mobile they are, the soft CC, the hard CC, and the potential burst. When I'm fighting a warrior right now, say a Hambo warrior, say you run a Hambo warrior right now. Yeah, I'm a little scared, but I can still see your hits coming. And if I react pretty decently, I can avoid them, block them, blind them, position myself out of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As an Elementalist, it is very difficult for me to do that, if not impossible, because of the constant CC through soft or hard CC. You're looking at, ice, or you're looking at here. Let me just go down the list because again, I want to actually throw out facts there instead of just blurting out shit. You know what I mean? Magnetic grasp. You're looking at earthquake. You're looking at a ton of ways to CC your opponent on top of saying somewhat ranged at them because your dagger, your range is 600 anyways. So I'm sorry, not 600, but some of it's like 400, 300. But even still, you're still out of melee range. Than compared to your opponent. So you're looking at a lot of factors there. But again, I'm only talking about this from a Guardian standpoint. You know what I mean? I can fight a warrior, especially a Hambo warrior, because I can see those hits coming. Hammer has very obvious telegraphs to them. Very obvious. If you can't see them coming, there's a problem.
Yeah.
If I can block them from a mile away. I can dodge them a mile away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There are some things that an Elementalist can do that I can't do anything against because I'm constantly getting CC'd or I'm constantly getting kited, and I can't do much about it, unfortunately. So that's the difference. Well, yes, it takes. I think again, I'm not trying to dish your warrior. I think it takes a little more to play the Elementalist properly. I'm not saying it doesn't, but what I'm saying is, if played properly, stronger than the warrior right now in terms of sustain, CC, mobility, and burst capability.
Oh yeah, I don't disagree on that. Elementals have actually always been that way. Warriors, the only reason why we are able to sustain ourselves as long as we can is through one of two ways. We either CC our opponent into the ground, or we rely on Healing Signet. If you take away Healing Signet, we lose a lot of sustain simply because of what you were saying. A lot of our tells are easy to deal with, or the things that have quicker tells are not as potent. Like the sword, you're going to get immobilized for about a second if the build's running Leg Specialist, and they leap at you, but that's only a second that you have to deal with it. Eviscerate has a very large tail. Eviscerate does a lot of damage, but yes, it has a very large tail. All of the hammers have a large tail. Now the longbow has large tails, appropriate tails on all of its big hitting stuff. I don't disagree that Elementalist if you play it at the same level, if a good Elementalist plays at the same level as a good warrior, the Elementalist is going to do a lot better because they have a lot more skills that reward them for good play. They have a lot more things in their kit than warrior. Warrior,
constant boon access as well. Just from swapping. I mean, goodness, as a guardian, my protection access is a joke compared to theirs. It's a joke. It's not even close. Like, I can spec heavily into protection access as a guardian. I still probably wouldn't touch an Elementalist. Yeah,
I was gonna say with the whole it takes more to play an Elementalist than it does a warrior and all that. Yes and no. Like, you need different.
It depends.
You need different mindsets, is what I was gonna say. Because like for an Elementalist, you need to have a lot better mechanical skill, and you need to know how things interact with each other. Whereas a warrior, you don't necessarily need to know. You don't have a lot of tools that combo with each other. You need to take what you have and know how to use those skills on their own standpoint. Like, you have to know how to use each skill and use it so it's benefited most by its own worth, because that's all you have as a warrior. You don't have any crazy combos that you can pull off. The most complicated combo that a warrior can do is a Fire Field, an Arcing Arrow, and then maybe an Earthshaker or a Warhorn Blast. Outside of that, maybe some leaps, but our leap finishers don't do a whole lot.
It doesn't give you might. It's just, I mean, it does in a sense, depending upon if you're going through a Fire Field.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about blast finishers where you're getting 3 for like 40 some odd seconds.
Yeah. Warriors, in order to play a warrior well, you need to know how to use how to get the most value out of each individual skill on your weapons and when to use your utilities. Outside of that, it's just knowing when to use the right thing. It's all about timing. And I remember when I was streaming once, I was giving advice on Warrior versus something else, and I was basically saying Warrior is all about timing, whereas about timing and cooldowns, whereas the other is all about combos and strategy. I think it was Elementalist or no Engineer versus Warrior. Warrior is very straightforward, but because of that straightforwardness, you need to know how to time everything perfectly. You need to make sure that you can land everything, that you can get everything to work in tandem perfectly, but not through combos, just through timings and like CC chains.
Right.
Whereas an engineer, you have to know, okay, I'm laying down this bomb, that's going to go off in so many seconds. I have to have this field out at this time, and he's probably going to do this, so I need to have this kit out at this time. It's more about being prepared, having more setup than it is reacting. Like Warrior's more reactive, whereas Elementals or Engineers more setup.
Preparing your skills and utilizing them in a certain order. I completely get it, and I agree to that, absolutely. And it just brings me back to the fact that, again, you're looking at just, again, I don't like any sort of builds or any sort of profession that gives you just so much of everything without lacking anything. I mean, granted, we're talking about different forms of sustain here. You're talking about blocks, blinds, and vulnerabilities. Kiting, which is also another form of sustain, constant healing. There are so many forms of sustain in this game that we just can't discount one or the other. You know what I mean? So, like, for instance, like the Elementalist doesn't really have many blocks, but they have a ton of access to boons, like a huge variety of boons, a nice, invulnerability for 3 seconds on a shorter cooldown, which isn't bad at all. Misform is actually amazing in my opinion, So you're looking at just all these factors combined into one. Yeah, you don't have many blocks, which I understand that, and the blocks may not be there, but you can make up for it hugely with the access to boons, your invulnerability, which again isn't on a massive cooldown. So there are quite a few forms, and again, you even have access to weakness on your target if you land it, which again is another form of sustainability for you. So there are quite a bit of ways they can sustain while putting, sustained pressure on you as well. So.
Yeah, again, the whole issue of Elementalist being too strong, I think a large part of it is perspective. Like, I don't feel they're too bad, but you feel they're pretty crazy. I think it's balance on a class versus class basis showing itself again.
Right.
And
I'm just talking about and just looking at it from like the rune and amulet standpoint. That is I think those are the main offenders here more than anything else. Yeah. Honestly, I'm not saying the class itself is ridiculous. I mean, yeah, it has quite a bit of access to almost everything. Yeah. But again, on the flip side, when you start to combine that rune set with that amulet, that's when it goes over the top.
Yeah, and that again, that's probably less to do, like you were just saying, it's probably less to do with the elementals and more to do with just the way those runes and amulets interact with each other. And the problem is mainly with the rune balance, with the amulet balance. It's hard to say what should be done definitively because there are a whole number of routes you could take balance-wise to help this. Like one thing that I've tested, and it's the thing about strength runes is while a lot of the builds that are running around SPVP benefit greatly from those runes, like your Hambo, like your elementals, stuff like that, not every single build goes for strength. Like, for example, I know for my own Hamtas build, if you use that in SPVP, one of the tweaks that you have to do is you have to change out the rune set, obviously, because Melandru's isn't the greatest in SPVP. It'd be better running off, say, like Holbrack, but that's right. Completely different. But what I've actually found works best for this build is Rage runes. It's basically the strength rune of the Fury boon. It gives you a damage boost when you have Fury. It gives you longer Fury duration. It gives you access to more Fury. The thing why it's better for the Hamtastic build than Strength would be is because you have more Fury access. So you're gaining that damage boost more often, and you're gaining it overall because you have more critical chance, and just the sheer amount of fury access the build has. Whereas the build just can't really, it can't stack might. It doesn't have forceful greatsword. It doesn't have a fire field from the longbow. It doesn't have any of that. So the strength runes, while they're nice, you'd have to change the build a lot more than
you have to change your weapon sets and whatnot. Because your weapon sets don't work with it. You have nothing there that is going to give you any fields for blasting into.
Yeah,
you have nothing there.
And the only might the build can really get is through like Sigil of Battle or Sigil of Strength. But at the same time, that's only going to get you so many stacks. So you'd have to complete. It wouldn't be the Hamtastic build anymore if you wanted to take advantage of the strength runes, because you'd have to take point. You did have to change up how the traits are spread out, or you have to change out the weapon sets. You'd have to, or change out the utility. It wouldn't be the Hamtastic build anymore, and that's why it's still a viable build. It still works just fine. I've tested it in SPVP, but you can't use strength runes with it, because strength runes just don't benefit as much as say rage do. It's a lot of the meta builds, or like the flavor of the month builds. They are powerful, yes. They're well thought out. They are viable. They're strong, yes. But they're not the only ones. They're just the ones that everyone kind of gravitates towards, because
of course,
their friends are doing it, or the pro PvPers are doing it.
It's the path of least resistance, man. Honestly, it's really what it comes down to, I think.
Exactly. Strength runes definitely are, I don't want to say a problem, but they probably are a bit better than they should be. But we shouldn't just nerf them into the ground, because it's not like they're the only rune set being used in SPVP. They're only the ones that are being used in the popular meta builds. I know there are a lot of builds that use Eagle runes. There are a lot of builds that use Pyro runes. A lot of builds that use Rage runes. Like, there any number of combinations. Like, I feel overall like runes are a lot better than they used. Like, they got
huge buffs.
Yeah,
all of them did, but just that one got such a massive buff. Like, I used to run pack runes. I loved pack runes. It's amazing. Pack runes were my favorite. I used to run that everywhere I went. World v World, PvE, PvP. It didn't matter where I was. As soon as strength runes got buffed, I immediately changed. Yeah. I mean, granted, pack runes also got buffed, but not to the extent of strength runes. So that's why I never run it again.
Yeah. Well, also one thing I just thought of that may be even more of an underlying cause than just strength runes. Look at the might boon itself. Look at the fact that the reason why what's the reason that makes strength runes so good? The fact that you can stack might. Well, why is that good? Because it's a stacking straight damage buff. And if you look at just how much extra power that stacking of might gives you, that's almost the root of the cause, is just how good is might. Might's really
amazing,
good.
Of course.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that, like, I fought so many of these elementals running these, and it's not even just the physical damage I'm taking. Just the burning access. It's not a ton of burning access. I'm not saying, but if I don't have like any cleanses up or something like that, and I'm getting hit with burning, and they have so many stacks of might on top of the celestial, I'm getting hit for a ton of burning now as well. Yeah. So I have to worry about both because of that high might access. Yeah.
And it's just the fact that might not only does your power, but it also does your condition damage. So it's good for condition builds too. It's just one of those things where it might just be the core issue is just how good might is, and maybe nerfing strength runes itself isn't so crazy, but maybe a nerf of the boon itself is needed. Maybe that's what the root cause or the root fix would be. Again, there are so many routes you could take that could fix this, because right now it's mainly might stacking on certain professions is way better than others, but how do you fix that when nerfing? It's really hard to say, because the thing about might stacking is it's rewarding good gameplay, because it means you're taking advantage of comboing things. You are putting forth the effort to make a boon that otherwise isn't going to do much more powerful, instead of doing something to your opponent, or instead of
that's sort of weird though, isn't it? Though, I mean, yes, you're sort of taking the time to do the stacking through proper comboing, but on the flip side, if you're just doing it for the boons and you're not actually doing it to affect your opponent, at least for me, isn't that just spamming? just to get it, because you're not inadvertently affecting your opponent through comboing on top of them. You're just doing it for the boon access itself. So yes, it's rewarding good play through through proper comboing. But if you're just doing it to get the boons, then in all honesty, isn't it just spamming at the end of the day?
Well, I look at it as similar to the mentalities that are needed for engineer and elementalist. It's setup. You're preparing to take down. Like you're giving yourself an in combat or pre-combat advantage, and then you're going in and you're using that advantage against your opponent. You're taking the time for that setup. Whereas if you just go in and go ham on it without worrying about those stacks, you haven't taken that extra time and you haven't put that extra care into giving yourself a combat advantage, so you don't deserve to have that boost. It's really weird in a game like this where the combat and how well you perform is based on how well you prepare, how well you manage your abilities, how skillful you are in your play. This is why balancing is such a nightmare in games like Guild Wars 2, because there are so many, you have to take skill into the equation, and since skill is such a nebulous thing, it's really hard to just say, oh yeah, the Frostbolt is doing too much damage. I'm pulling a random skill name out of my ass.
Right,
I know there's no Frostbolt, but let's just nerf it down. Okay, now we don't have to worry about that because it's one isolated issue. There's no external factors. It just the way a combat system would work it automatically hits their target. Blah blah blah. In a game like this, where you've got blinds, you've got blocks, you've got reactive dodging, you've got conditioning, like you've just
so many ways to mitigate. You do,
and you've got so many ways to mitigate, but it's all at the power of the player, and it's not necessarily guaranteed for each time. It's a lot less cut and dry. So saying, oh yeah, just nerf the might boon, that might not be the best way to go. Oh yeah, just nerf strength runes instead, that might not be the best way to go either. Nerf elementalist, it's really hard to say, and I do not envy the balanced team for this game or any other game.
It is ridiculous because there's so many different mechanics for each profession, and you have to mold that together and try and find a proper balance. Good luck there.
Yeah, exactly. It's really hard to say what it is, but going back to what kind of the base thing of the conversation was, for some people, for some professions, elementalists are not that big of a deal. Like myself, I can go toe to toe with an elementalist and I'm fine. But for someone like you, for guardians, it's pretty crazy, and they out-sustain you. It's kind of hard to say where we go from here.
Because you can't just balance it in a 1v1 situation, since that's not what this game's about.
Yeah,
you can't just do it to compensate a guardian who can't win of equal or higher skill just because of the simple fact that the other profession out-sustains you. You can't do that. That's not how it should be.
Yeah, because it is a team fighting game, and until we even when I'm gonna say when team deathmatch becomes like a sanctioned mode and like a ladder mode, it's still gonna be a team game, because it's just like, say, arenas and WoW. You are working with your teammates. It's not just a 1v1. It's you have to compensate for multiple opponents and having an ally or several allies next to you. So even then, it'll still be a team game. It's not going to be, you can't do a 1v1 balance, because if you do 1v1 balancing, your 1v1s are going to be perfectly balanced, but your team fight's going to be all over the place, because you stack 5 engineers together. They're going to face roll everything. I mean, granted, they kind of do that as it is, but it's you can't balance around 1v1. You can't balance engineer, or I can't balance elementalist and guardian together because the guardian can't do as well 1v1 against the elementalist. No, it has to be taken in a team balance perspective, and that's another layer of what do we do. Because just because you're having issues against elementalists and I'm not, doesn't mean we should buff you or nerf elementalist or whatever, because that's ignoring the entire team play aspect.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And let me just backtrack just a little bit, and I'm gonna just to point that out there. And again, this is something that I irk a lot of people when I say this, and I'm sorry if I do, but oh well. Now, when you look at, say, both engineers and elementalists, you obviously see they have a lot more skill access than other professions, correct?
Yes.
Especially with the elementalists, you have access to so many through your attunements. Now, again, this is where I disagree with the skillful play. Just because you have access to more skills doesn't mean your class is harder to play. Honestly,
Yes.
in my opinion, and again, this may be disagreeable, it gives you it leaves your room for error. You have a lot more room for error due to the increased skill access, which can help you sustain or damage your opponent. Now, again, I always compare it to my guardian, so whatever, because again, I'm just like everyone else in a sense. I don't have as many skills as someone else does, but the room for error in that regard, especially as say a DPS guardian, is a lot smaller because of the simple fact that a lot of your cooldowns are on relatively, a lot of your skills are on relatively long cooldowns. 3 out of the 4 meditations are on long cooldowns. So you can't just you just can't spam something or use it at the wrong time, or else you're going to be royally screwed. There's you don't have access to other skills to assist you. So I'm not saying the Elementalist isn't difficult to play, but to say that just because you have more skills than the average person, just because you have more skill access doesn't make it harder to play. It leaves you to have a lot more room for error due to the fact that the more access to skills that you have will increase your sustain and/or damage and/or pressure on your opponent. That's how I feel about it. Like I said, many people disagree, but I've always felt that way. Same with engineers in a sense. You know what I mean? Yes, you have to manage your rotations. Yes, you have to manage, more skills than your average opponent. But you also have multiple more skills to keep yourself, alive, or fighting or to burst someone, than someone who doesn't have his access to many skills and may have blown 1 or 2 at the wrong time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That I could see arguments on both sides of it. Like you've got yours, which is you've got more stuff to catch yourself if you've got. If you screw up, you've got extra tools to keep yourself alive or keep the pressure on, even though you mess something up. But on the flip side, I could see there are a few key things that need to happen, and if you don't make those happen, you're screwed. Like I could see that argument being made as well. They're both valid. They're both. I can understand. I have to deal with the whole. Oh, you have a lot more health and armor, so you have more forgiveness in that regard. You have a lot more passive things back in. It's like yes and no, because yeah, I have a lot more health damage, but if I just sit in there and face tank, I'm screwed. Or if I miss with my backbreaker, it's a very large loss to me. It's